In this video, we're going to talk about the zero tolerance 0452CF Sinkevich design. And this was Dmitry Sinkevich's first collaboration with zero tolerance, and I believe his first collaboration with a production knife company. But he's made a few more since then, and they all have kind of this classic, kind of really interesting, cool, tactical type looking design. And that's the first thing you notice about this knife. It's just a great looking design. You see here on the handle that there's almost a symmetry going on. There's this kind of rounded area here, and then the same size finger divot on each side of that rounded area. And I'll talk about the grip area later on in this video, but it also has a really classic blade shape. So when you flip it open, you see that it has a very, kind of, can't really say it other than classic, I wouldn't say traditional, but just kind of a simple but really good looking drop point blade. See how the tang just kind of drops slightly there to a very pointy tip there, and then it has a lot of straight area until you get to the belly, and a nice sweeping belly, not too big, so that it comes to a thinner or pointier tip there. And the grinds really accentuate the classic look of this blade, I think. It has a swedge up here on both sides, which is really well done, and then a flat grind for the main bevel, which is also really well done. This thing came really sharp. I didn't really test it all that much so far. I just got this yesterday, but it did come really sharp, which it seems like zero tolerance knives do. The carbon fiber also is really nice. You see some carbon fiber has kind of a clear layer over top of it, like a lacquer or something. This doesn't have that. There's definitely some tackiness to it. It gives you a little bit of grip, so it isn't smooth. It definitely has some texture to it here on the carbon fiber. And then when you look at the side here, you can see the weave of the carbon fiber. I'm not sure how well there you go, that's going to show up a little bit. And it looks like really high quality carbon fiber. You can see the weave all the way around on the chamfering of the edges, and there's no liner on that carbon fiber side. Some of the people who like zero tolerance knives for the fact that they're overbuilt or whatever, kind of weren't big fans of that because they think that it makes it a weaker knife. I don't really think so. This pin here is going to hold it together. I don't really think there's anything that you could be doing with a knife that's going to just totally destroy this carbon fiber, especially with this big pivot. So I don't think it makes it a weaker knife. You can squeeze this knife and there's no flex that you can feel or anything like that, like with kind of a thinner plastic or FRN type handle. So I don't think that the lack of a liner is a problem on this. It's definitely, like I say, kind of a tactical type design. When you grip it here, because of this butt area, it's really solid in your hand and kind of a hammer grip type grip here. Doesn't feel like it's going to come out of your hand at all. I don't really necessarily look for that in the function of a knife, but if you're looking for a tactical knife, I'm sure that this would be a good option if you are willing to spend the money on this thing. Now again, I'll talk about that with the grip area a little later, but also aside from the tactical type design, I think it's a practical knife in the sense that this blade is going to be useful for most cutting tasks you're going to do. It's not a kind of out there blade shape that might not be useful for everything. You're going to be able to open boxes certainly with this. It has a thin enough grind, and you'll be able to cut food if you have to. I think that because it has this nice simple drop point blade shape, it's going to work well for your practical type uses also, which is really what I carry a knife for, aside from just enjoying having a nice knife. I just want to be able to like open boxes and cut things when I need to, rather than like tactical type stuff. The other thing that's nice about this knife, if you are into the tactical type things is that the blade sits very, very deep, like one of the deeper sitting blades I've seen. And what this allows you to do, especially with this kind of grip area here, is grip it like this. So if you wanted to, kind of grip it like that for, hitting things or something, you could definitely do that. But on the practical side, again, of what that does for the design is it makes it so, one, it's pretty, thin in the pocket for, I think this is a like 4.1 inch blade or something like that. It's a pretty long blade. It doesn't really take up too much space in your pocket because it is, kind of thin this way. And it also makes it so that the tip sits really deep. Let me see if I can get this to focus. Yep, so that the tip sits really deep in the blade well here. And that's nice for a few reasons. It's more of a problem on traditionals, but I really hate it when a tip is almost above the frame of the knife. It's one of those things that I dislike more than a lot of other people who like knives. But this one definitely is never gonna have that problem. And you can see that it's really well centered there, which brings me to the fact that this is a really well-made knife. It came with a great light switch flipping action. Didn't really need any break-in time for that. Now, there's two different kinds of flipping. You can do push button, which is when you push it straight in. But if you look at where the pivot is, this flipper is actually above the pivot. So just, by like the physics of it, a push button flip is never going to work with this, because the flipper is above the pivot. So you have to use a light switch type flip, and that just means that you pull your finger down rather than pushing into it. But it flips really well every time. I've never had it not deploy well, and that's partly because it does have a strong detent. So one thing you have to make sure that you don't do is squeeze the lock bar as you're trying to flip it. But, it doesn't make it too difficult, actually. You can still definitely flip it even if you are squeezing that lock bar. Like I said here, it came really centered, which is, nice. It's definitely not going to hit the frame or anything like that when you're closing or opening it. There's no lock stick, which is nice. You can see over here it has this screw, and that's for the lock bar insert. So rather than it having just this titanium lock bar going onto the hard steel, the titanium being softer and the steel being harder, some knives were having galling issues where the titanium would stick to the steel and kind of pull off and make it so that there was lock stick. So companies have been adding these steel lock bar inserts for a while. It should lengthen the life of your knife, the lock, keep it from wearing as much, which is good if you flip your knife a lot just for, because it's fun, which I do. You can, start to see some galling and some of the lock moving across the tang of the knife there. You can see that this has pretty early lockup. I don't like them. Some people look for early lockup. I don't. But this is not so early that it might be a safety problem where, it'll slip off. I don't think that this lock is going to slip off of the tang or anything like that. So really solid feeling lock. Doesn't feel like it's going to unlock accidentally or anything like that. And, you can really grip it. People talk a lot about frame locks being reliable because you are keeping the lock locked when you grip it. I think that is only true in a hammer grip. I don't really buy the whole frame locks are stronger than other locks argument. I think that it's more that they're easier to make, so companies like making them, and custom makers and then also production companies have kind of propagated the idea that they're stronger. One thing you notice with a frame lock here, and this is true for all frame locks, I'm certainly not saying that this is a thing just for this knife. Any frame lock, especially a titanium frame lock, it's thick up here at where it interfaces with the blade, but they all have this cutout down here. And you can see that because of this cutout, the cutout is so that it has the spring, and can go from being locked to being unlocked easily, so that you're not like, it's not real difficult to do. When it really comes down to it, this material here is the only thing holding this lock closed. And that's not very much titanium, and titanium is really not that strong. Yeah, it's strong for its weight compared to steel, but it's still not as strong as steel. So a steel liner lock is actually usually going to be thicker than the material left over here. Now that's not true on some knives, like the Spyderco Chalkway. It has a really thick lock cut out there, but basically I'm just saying that I don't think that inherently a frame lock is stronger than other locks. If you're using a hammer grip, then yeah, it's gonna, not close on you because you're holding the lock there, but that's true also of a flipper, right? The flipper tab keeps it from closing. And in more of a pinch grip like this, it doesn't have that effect. It's not gonna hold it closed for you. But, as frame locks go, this is a well-made one and everything. The other thing that's nice about this knife, the construction of this knife, is, obviously it has those ball bearing pivot, which makes it really smooth. This one is drop closed to there, but not really the whole way. But I think that it would definitely break into where it would be fully drop closed. But another thing is that it has this really nice pillar construction. Now I don't really have any reason for liking this, but I do like it when there's lots of open space here. I think it just looks good, makes it look simpler and everything. And there's just 2 pillar screws there, and then the blade stop there. So kind of a cool construction. Now moving to some things that I don't really love about this knife. I think that considering the really good looks of everything else on this knife, the clip is kind of a less than perfect choice. For utility, I think that it's a great clip. It's a deeper carry type clip, which is good, especially being that this is a pretty long knife. It won't stick out of your pocket too much. Your pocket will be about right here, so only like 1/4 of an inch of it will stick out. But for the looks of it, I think it would look nicer if it was a gray, titanium or something like that. It's just a little small, I think, and a little bit out of sorts. It doesn't really seem like it goes with the rest of the looks of the knife. But, again, that's an aesthetics thing, not a practicality thing. The lanyard hole here, knife companies always want to add lanyard holes. I don't really use lanyard holes on full-size clipped knives. I'll put them on some of my smaller knives that don't have clips, because a lanyard, if the knife doesn't have a clip, can help you to take it out of your pocket. But when the knife does have a clip like this, I don't really see, other than just as a accessory to the knife, why you would need a lanyard, and especially when the lanyard is below the pocket clip. So this lanyard is actually going to be inside of the pocket, the start of the lanyard. So I just don't really think it's necessary. I think that this knife would look a little bit better without that, and other knives have kind of the same thing going on. Another thing here is the grip area. This is something that I've talked about on the paramilitary too, and a lot of knives seem to have this kind of problem, and it might be that my hands are pretty wide. Actually, they're very wide, kind of like bear type hands, and I don't think a lot of people have this problem. I think that if your hands are pretty regular sized, this grip area actually would be perfectly fine for you. But even if it is perfectly fine for you, the one thing that I kind of hate to see is grip area, possible grip area wasted. You see that the handle is about this long, and I'm actually gonna get some other knives and a ruler to compare this to. So I'm gonna stop this video and then kind of transition into a couple knives to compare this to. So now that I have some knives here to compare the both lanyard hole and grip area on the Zero Tolerance 0452CF with, let me kind of talk about the lanyard holes first. So like I said here, this lanyard hole is below where the clip is going to sit in your pocket. Now, even when that's not the case, like on this knife, you can see this knife has a lanyard hole spot on the clip, but there's no lanyard hole. So, you know, probably could have used a different clip on that one for Spyderco. But even when that's not the case, like on this Native 5, I've put a lanyard on this, and being that it's, you know, it's already a clip knife that's really easy to get out of your pocket, you know where it's going to be because it's clipped. I don't really think that it adds anything. You know, it doesn't add any ease of use. Maybe if you like, you know, the beads that people put on their lanyards or something, you know, that's a fine reason to use a lanyard, but I don't think it adds much. And I think that it does detract from the looks. Another thing that knife companies do with lanyards is they make these tiny holes. Like this hole is going to be almost impossible to get you know, paracord, like regular full strength paracord through. I know people do it, but I think that it just would be better if you want to put a lanyard hole, just make it a little bigger so it's easier to get the paracord through. This one on the Ouroboros is a little bigger, so that's a little better, and it's also above the clip. Maybe if you know, wanted to carry these knives clipless, if you wanted to take the clip off, that would make sense. Another one here, I carry this zero tolerance 0452CF tipped down because I think that the clip is, oh, that was a bad flip, pretty uncomfortable when you have it tip up. So, you know, lanyard hole is useless when you carry it tip down. But I know most people carry tip up these days. And then to look at a knife here that doesn't have a lanyard hole. Now these are holes in the blade, but that's because the traditional Shockwave fixed blade has holes in the handle there. But I think that if you can try to think like compare what this lanyard hole adds to the looks that it kind of detracts. It doesn't, you know, make it look, it's not like it makes it look bad overall, but I think that it's not worth, you know, putting a hole in this nice big carbon fiber handle for all the utility that lanyard hole is going to give you. But that's just my thoughts on the lanyard hole. And moving on to the grip area. Like I said, this is something that I've had trouble with on other knives, and it's only really because I have a really wide hand in this direction, right? So if you have a long hand, like long fingers and, you know, long hand bones or whatever, this shouldn't be a problem for you, and I don't think it is a problem for most people. But on this knife and on the Spyderco Paramilitary, which, you know, everybody loves, I wish that I could, you know, keep on and enjoy using it. What ends up making the grip area too small for me is this kind of design where the butt of the knife comes up at the end of the grip area and then cuts off part of the handle. So I realized that I forgot to get a measuring tape, but we use this pen that's right here. So if you look at the handle, this pen is about the length of the handle, right? But the grip area is actually only like from the top of the pen to where the pen grip area starts. So, you know, kind of taking the knife away, the handle is this long, but the grip area is only this long, okay? So they have kind of neglected to use this part, which is understandable. If you don't want to put a forward finger choil like is on, you know, some of these Spydercos I'm going to compare it to, then this area above the pivot is not going to be useful for grip area. But the problem is when you don't have that forward finger choil and also have this kind of butt area where there's like an inch of handle behind this ridge that isn't usable for grip area. It makes it so that this main grip area is a lot smaller than you would think for the length of the handle. And I'm not saying it's totally uncomfortable. I could definitely, you know, use this knife. It doesn't hurt my hand. I don't even really think there'd be the crazy hot spots. Maybe, you know, if you really, you know, were carving wood or something up here and down here on your index finger and pinky finger or little finger. So it's not super uncomfortable. It's just kind of crowded, I would say. It's a crowded grip. And it's the same on the paramilitary too. To kind of compare that to some other knives, the Spyderco Ouroboros. So this is a much smaller knife, right? If you can compare the overall handle length, it's about 1.5 inches shorter. But when you open both of them up here, even the main grip area of the Spyderco Ouroboros, you see how it's about the same, you know, a little smaller, but it's about the same. And what actually ends up happening is, because rather than curving up at the end of the grip area, as it does on the zero tolerance 0452, the Ouroboros curves down. And that's a big thing that I think makes a handle more comfortable for someone like me with wide hands. If it curves down, what ends up happening is your pinky and even sometimes your middle finger can just kind of grip off the edge, right? And it works well. I've used knives like this on, you know, for lots of cutting, and it makes for a comfortable handle. One that's kind of in between is the Spyderco Native. So the main grip area is actually smaller, you know, relatively smaller on the Spyderco Native 5 than on the zero tolerance. But because it doesn't have a strong upward kind of sweeping butt of the handle here, I can still grip it like this. Okay, see how my pinky is just kind of on the edge of that? It doesn't make it that uncomfortable because my pinky can slide off a little bit if it needs to, and because it doesn't have a sharp upward curve here, it's not going to make it uncomfortable. Now, the thing that the Native has that the zero tolerance doesn't is a forward choil. So you can also kind of grip up to do closer cutting and things like that, and then it's definitely a big enough handle. But even, you know, down here, it's also big enough for my hand because my pinky can kind of move around and isn't crowded by this upward sweeping butt of the handle. To kind of compare it to another knife here, this knife, the Rat 1, kind of, because it doesn't have a forward choil, loses a lot of handle length from here where the grip area starts to the edge. But because this is kind of a gentle sweeping butt area here, and the grip area is actually about the same, but because it's, you know, a less abrupt upward sweep, it's a little more comfortable. Your pinky feels like, again, it can kind of slide down if it needs to, so that it makes it a little less crowded than when you grip this and your pinky can't really slide down. So again, like I talked about, if you want this knife for like tactical purposes so that your hand doesn't slide at all, that might be a good thing for you. You know, you might like that it really holds your hand in there because your pinky can't slide down and your index finger can't slide up. But to compare this to some knives that don't have this problem at all, the Spyderco Chalkway. So this whole handle, because it's just one kind of gentle sweep, can be used. So even though the handle is, again, I'd say about 1 inch, maybe a little less shorter than on the zero tolerance, it has just way more grip. You can grip it up high, you know, you can grip it up here on the tang of the knife if you really want to get up close. Then you can grip it down lower too. Sometimes people say that this handle looks like it would be uncomfortable. It's actually, I think, one of the most ergonomic handles of a modern knife that I have. So you can see the difference there. Because this handle's really simple, it has more grip area. And then, you know, this is an even bigger knife, the Spyderco Police 4. But because it has that forward choil, it actually has a little bit less edge area, maybe even like 1/2 inch. I guess the total blade lengths are about the same. I thought the Spyderco was a little bigger, but I guess they are about the same. And then the handles, the Spyderco is a little bigger, but because the grip area here, as you can see, is way bigger, you have a lot of space left over. Even when you're all the way up the top, you got lots of space, but you can kind of choke down if for whatever reason you needed to. And then this one has a forward choil also. So, you know, kind of been talking about this for a long time, I guess, but it's one of those things that I'd really like to like the paramilitary too, and I'd really like to, you know, love this knife, but I don't like to have my hand crowded like that. So that's one reason that I like these traditionals. I mean, this is a tiny knife, right? This is, you know, half the length actually probably a little less than half the length of the handle of this knife. But because it has this nice gentle sweep to the end of the handle, you can grip it however you want. You can grip it low, you can pinch, and it's going to be comfortable. So that's one of the reasons I like these traditional knives. But that was a lot of talking on the grip area there, and I don't mean to make it seem like I, hate this knife. It's just like I said, it's not even really that uncomfortable. It's just a little crowded, and it doesn't take away from the looks of the knife. It even adds to it. I think that because it has this big upsweeping butt end of the knife here, and this very, like I say, symmetrical and cool looking grip and handle, it really adds to the aesthetics of the knife. It looks like a classy tactical knife, I would say, especially, with this very high quality seaming carbon fiber and the nice simple grind lines on the nice classic drop point blade. Like I said there at the beginning, it makes for a very good looking knife. So one of the big attributes of this knife that I think make it appealing is that as long as you don't have a problem with the blade length, which, for some people an over 4-inch blade length is illegal, that's not something I have to worry about where I am, but as long as you don't have to worry about that, the length of the blade, I think that this could be both a very practical knife, just for normal cutting, like I say, cardboard, boxes, food, tape, whatever you have to cut. I think it could be a very, good tactical knife if you're into that. Like I say, the positive end of this grip type is that your hand's definitely not going to move. Once you get this nice solid grip, your hand's not going to move. You're going to be keeping the lock closed, and, it has a very pointy tip and everything. But, the third kind of role that this knife I think would be, really good for, and that you might not expect, is as kind of a multi-function gentleman's knife or dress-up knife. Because, again, with this really nice carbon fiber, the good looks of the shape of the handle, the simple blade, especially because it isn't coated. I think coated knives tend to look a little bit more aggressive. And the kind of minimal branding, it ends up looking pretty, I think, refined. It's a refined looking knife. So definitely, I would say the Zero Tolerance 0452 is a very, very well made knife. This knife reminded me why I like the Zero Tolerance 0561 so much. They're just really well put together, really sturdy, quality construction knives. They're made in the USA, and they have a great warranty. Both Zero Tolerance and Kershaw, which are both owned by Kai, I think is how you say it, Kai, have a great warranty. You don't have to worry about anything like if if the knife breaks for some reason, you can send it in and they'll, help you out and everything. So that's nice also, and really well made and really good looking. So as long as you're not one of the very few people who, don't like this kind of grip where the butt end has this upward sweep, and as long as the clip doesn't bother you too much, which I don't think it's a big deal, then I think this is a great knife for like I say, 3 different things. Very practical. If you're into carrying a knife for tactical purposes, it would probably be good for that. I think that's kind of what it's designed for. And then I also think it's designed to, again, be kind of a refined looking knife, almost like a tactical gentleman's folder. So if you're looking for something like that, I think the Zero Tolerance 0452CF is a great option.